The stars were not shining tonight. In the dark expanse above the Xylar Dominion fleet, only the faint glow of distant suns marked the emptiness of space. Commander Lyric stood on the bridge of the flagship Dreadspire, her multiple eyes scanning the readouts and holographic maps. The war had turned against her people, and there was no sugarcoating the truth. The humans were winning. She had fought in many battles, and she had seen the rise and fall of empires, but this was different. The humans were new to the galaxy, yet somehow they seemed unstoppable. Their ships were smaller and less advanced than the Xylar dreadnoughts, but they moved with a strange boldness that no one had ever faced before. They refused to flee, refused to surrender, and refused to fight by the rules anyone else understood. Lyrics tightened her claws on the console. "Report," she demanded. A young officer, trembling slightly, tapped the display. "Commander, the forward fleet has taken losses on Calthera Prime. Our reinforcements were ambushed. Estimated casualties are—" He paused, swallowing hard. 30%, 30%. In any other battle, that might have been acceptable. But the humans were striking at multiple fronts at once. Each time the Xylar tried to regroup, another fleet would appear where it should not exist. They seemed to anticipate every move before the Xylar even thought of it. Lyrics frowned. The humans were not merely fighting. They were reshaping the war itself. "Signal the council," she said. "Request reinforcements, and find out how these humans operate. Every pattern, every tactic, everything we know, reassess it." The officer hesitated. "Commander, our intelligence is still incomplete. They do not fight like any species we know. Then we will learn," Lyric snapped, "or we will die trying." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of the engines and the distant ping of incoming messages. Lyrics knew the council would panic if they saw the numbers, the losses, the confusion. The Xylar Dominion had always relied on strict order, overwhelming numbers, and precision strikes. The humans ignored all of it, and that made them dangerous. A sensor alert blinked red on the main display. Lyrics turned to see a cluster of small, agile ships darting through the void, weaving between the massive Xylar vessels. The ships moved in unpredictable patterns, almost playful yet deadly. Lasers struck the hulls of her capital ships, but not in the expected trajectory. Her shields absorbed the impact, but the humans were probing, learning, adjusting with each strike. "Deploy interceptors," Lyrics ordered. "Take out the lead vessels before they reach our carriers." "Interceptors launched," the officer replied, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. The small human ships danced around the interceptors, dodging missiles as if the missiles were invisible. Then, almost casually, one human ship swooped between two larger ones, firing a pulse that disabled a communications array. It was not a large attack, but the chaos it caused was immediate. Orders failed to transmit, formations broke, and the Xylar ships collided in the confusion. Lyrics felt a spike of anger. "Target them!" she shouted, but even she knew it would not be enough. The humans were too unpredictable. They did not attack in lines or waves. They attacked in patterns that made no sense, yet always worked. Her second-in-command, Varric, approached. His antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, we have reports of human activity on multiple fronts. They've disrupted supply lines, disabled our orbital defenses, and our pilots say the humans improvise in ways that make no logical sense." Lyric's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Illogical does not mean weak. They are clever and they are fast. We underestimated them. That is our mistake." A sudden alarm rang. The sensors had detected a larger human fleet emerging from hyperspace near the industrial planet of Keltris III. It was bold, almost reckless. No other species would risk such a frontal attack when outnumbered. But humans did not think the way others did. Lyric's mind raced. She had faced invaders, rebels, even insurgent uprisings. But nothing had prepared her for this. Every calculation her commanders ran failed to predict human tactics. Every plan they made fell apart under the humans' improvisation. She realized something terrifying. The humans were not just strong or lucky. They were adaptable, and that made them unpredictable. The Xylar fleet scrambled to intercept the human force, but each move the humans made seemed to anticipate them. They split their ships, drawing Xylar forces into traps. They targeted weak points in the fleet's formation. They even used debris fields as cover, turning the natural hazards of space into weapons. Lyrics gritted her teeth. "Hold formation," she barked. "Do not let them break our lines." But it was too late. Reports came in from every sector. Losses were mounting faster than the Xylar could replace them. Lyrax watched in disbelief as a small human fighter, far smaller and weaker than her own ships, disabled an entire weapons array on a capital ship. It moved like it had a mind of its own, weaving through fire, striking at the perfect moment, then vanishing into space. How? Varric whispered. Lyrax shook her head. I do not know. But we must survive long enough to find out. In the council chamber later, the leaders of the Xylar Dominion gathered. Their faces were pale, even for a species that rarely showed emotion. Maps glowed with red markers where human activity had struck. Every strike was unexpected. Every victory had a cost, but the humans never faltered. The council elder, a massive figure named Zalthor, slammed a claw on the table. This is impossible. How can they fight like this? They have no honor, no discipline. Lyrax spoke calm but firm. It is not about honor or discipline. Humans do not fight like us. They do not follow our rules. And that is why we are losing. The room fell silent. No one wanted to admit it, but it was true. The humans were not just another enemy, they were a phenomenon. Their ingenuity, courage, and willingness to take risks was changing the rules of war itself. Lyrax turned back to the viewports, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, the humans were preparing their next strike. She did not know how they did it or why they were so fearless, but she knew one thing. If the Xylar did not adapt, the Dominion would fall. And for the first time in her long life, Lyrax felt fear. Fear, but also a strange sense of anticipation. She would face these humans and she would find a way to beat them. Somehow, because the Xylar survived by fighting, and they had never known defeat until now. The bridge lights dimmed, and the hum of the Dreadspire filled the silence. Outside, the stars waited, cold and unfeeling. And somewhere among them, humans moved, shifting everything, changing the course of the war in ways no one could predict. Lyrax clenched her claws, her eyes reflecting the distant lights. Then we will learn, she whispered. We will learn from them, and we will fight back. The war had reached a tipping point, and for the first time, the galaxy realized that humans were not just another species to conquer. They were a force that could not be ignored. The humans had a way of appearing where no one expected them. It was almost like they were everywhere at once, yet always precise. Commander Lyrax stared at the holomap in the war room of the Dreadspire, her many eyes tracing the strange movements of human fleets. Every simulation, every prediction had failed. The humans were not just clever, they were impossible to predict. Commander, Varric said nervously, another human force has appeared near the supply lines of Xylar Prime. They've destroyed fuel depots and communication arrays, and they left before we could engage. Lyrax's claws clicked against the console. Again? How are they always ahead of us? They're small, fast, and adaptable. Our sensors cannot track them efficiently. They split into multiple groups, attack, then vanish before we can react. Varric replied. Lyrax turned to face the tactical officers. Focus on patterns. Humans are unpredictable, yes, but nothing is random. They follow a logic we do not yet understand. Find it. The officers worked quickly, analyzing the data, scanning through hours of battle footage and attempting to find a pattern in the chaos. Lyrax watched, silently growing frustrated. The humans did not fight like any known species. They did not rely on superior numbers or firepower. They relied on instinct, intuition, and improvisation. A warning tone sounded. Commander, sensors detect human ships heading toward the Kael'Tris III defense station. They're approaching at high speed from an unexpected vector. Lyrax's multifaceted eyes widened. The humans were daring, almost reckless by Xylar standards, but reckless often worked in their favor. Prepare the defense turrets, she ordered. Launch interceptors and block their path. The humans arrived like a storm. Small, nimble fighters darted between turrets and destroyers, dodging lasers with a grace that seemed impossible. Larger ships moved with purpose, targeting weak points in the station's defenses. The Xylar fleet responded, firing in tight formations, but every maneuver was anticipated and countered. Lyrax leaned forward, studying the battle closely. She noticed something unusual. The humans did not fight in lines or waves. They split into unpredictable groups, some attacking, some observing, some retreating only to return with a new plan. It was as if they were learning with every strike, adjusting instantly to Xylar strategies. Commander, Varric said quietly, they're improvising mid-battle. Our tactics, they don't work against them. Lyrics nodded slowly. Yes, and that is why they are dangerous. This is not war as we know it. They are not just fighting. They are changing the rules while fighting. Meanwhile, a small human strike team led by Captain Elena Voss infiltrated the heavily guarded orbital defense hub. Their ships were smaller, lighter, and far more agile than the Xylar interceptors. Using a combination of stealth technology, quick maneuvers, and daring strategy, they disabled the station's main weapon arrays. Then, almost casually, they vanished into space, leaving the Xylar commanders scrambling to understand what had happened. In the war room, alarms blared. Lyrics watched the communications logs fill with reports of Xylar units failing at multiple locations. Her officers were panicked, unsure of how to respond. "Focus," she barked. "We cannot let fear control us. We fight back or we die." But even as she spoke, another report came in. Human fighters had infiltrated a supply convoy near the mining planet of Talvik. In mere hours, they had disabled the convoy's engines, evacuated key cargo, and escaped without a single casualty. The Xylar soldiers were stunned. How could such a small force cause so much damage? Lyrics's claws dug into the console. "They adapt faster than we can plan," she muttered. "They are not simply attacking. They are studying us, learning us." Varric approached, his antennae twitching nervously. "Commander, intelligence suggests the humans value initiative over orders. Their squads make decisions independently, yet they remain coordinated. It is unlike anything we have encountered." Lyrix's many eyes narrowed. "Independence, initiative, coordination without rigid command. That is what makes them formidable. They are not predictable and they are not afraid. That combination is deadly." Hours later, Lyrix convened a meeting with her top commanders. The mood was grim. Maps displayed human movements across multiple systems. Every strike had been effective, and every time the Xylar attempted retaliation, the humans were already gone or countering in a different sector. Zalthor, the elder of the council, slammed his claw on the table. "We have superior firepower, yet they humiliate us at every turn. How can a species so new, so primitive be so effective?" Lyric shook her head. "They are not primitive. They are adaptive. Every mistake we make, they learn from it instantly. Every trap we set, they find a way around it. They are evolving in real time." The council fell silent. No one wanted to admit the truth, but Lyrics continued. "We cannot fight them using the same rules. We must think like they do, act like they do, or we will lose everything." Back in space, Captain Elena Voss observed the Xylar fleet from her cockpit. Her ship was small, easily outmatched, but she smiled. "Ready for another round?" she said to her co-pilot. "Always," the co-pilot replied. Voss's squad split into 3 groups. Some attacked the supply lines directly, drawing Xylar forces into a trap. Others circled behind enemy lines, disabling communications and engines. The last group observed, relaying information in real time, anticipating Xylar responses and adjusting tactics instantly. Lyrics watched from the Dreadspire, helpless as her ships fell into confusion once again. Every human maneuver was brilliant, precise, and unpredictable. Her fleet had numbers, weapons, and experience, but the humans had something far more dangerous: the ability to think outside the rules, to improvise, and to take risks that no other species would dare. Hours later, after the humans withdrew, the Xylar forces regrouped. Lyrix's officers were exhausted, frustrated, and fearful. Lyrix herself felt a mix of admiration and rage. She could not ignore what she had witnessed. Humans were not just strong, they were extraordinary. She turned to Varric. "Prepare a full report on their tactics. Every movement, every decision. I want to understand how they operate. We cannot beat them by force alone. We must learn their ways." Varric nodded. "It will take time, Commander. They adapt faster than we can analyze." Lyrix's eyes glimmered. "Then we have no choice. We adapt faster." Meanwhile, Captain Voss and her team returned to the human fleet, their small ships darting among the larger vessels. The humans were tired but exhilarated. Every engagement had taught them something new. Every battle had strengthened their understanding of their enemy. Voss looked out at the stars, thoughtful. "We're making a difference," she said. "One strike at a time. They think they control the galaxy, but we're shifting the balance." Her co-pilot laughed softly. "And they don't even know it yet." The Xylar Dominion, vast and powerful, had begun to realize a terrifying truth. Humans were not fighting by the rules of war. They were rewriting the rules entirely. And the galaxy was about to change in ways no one could predict. Back on the Dreadspire, Lyric stared at the holomap, her mind racing. The humans had already outmaneuvered them in multiple systems. If they continued like this, the Xylar fleet would be shattered before they even understood what had hit them. But Lyric refused to give in to despair. She had faced impossible odds before and survived. Humans were clever, yes, but cleverness could be countered. Adaptability could be studied, and courage could be measured. She would find a way to fight back. Somehow, the war was far from over. The humans were a problem, a puzzle, and a force unlike anything the Xylar had ever faced. But Commander Lyric had survived challenges far worse than this. And she would survive this one too. Somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships glinted against the void. Bold, daring, and unstoppable, they were shifting the balance of the war, and the Xylar Dominion had only just begun to understand the magnitude of what they were facing. The galaxy was changing, one unpredictable move at a time. The battle over Keltris IV began at dawn, or at least what the humans called dawn. In the blackness of space, no sun lit the scene, but the horizon of the planet glowed faintly from its core reactor, casting pale light over the Xylar fleet. Commander Lyric watched from the bridge of the Dreadspire, her multiple eyes tracing the enemy movements. The humans were approaching, bold as ever, and her fleet, though larger and better armed, felt suddenly fragile. "This is it," Lyric muttered. "We crush them here, or the Dominion will crumble." Varric, her second-in-command, shook his antennae nervously. "Commander, their numbers are small, but their coordination—" "It's unpredictable," Lyric finished. "Yes, I see it. But size and firepower will prevail. It must." The human fleet, led by Captain Elena Voss, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, or at least it seemed perfect to the human eye. Each ship moved independently, yet in perfect harmony. Smaller fighters darted around the Xylar vanguard, testing their defenses, while larger human warships flanked from unexpected angles. Lyric's mind raced. She had seen humans improvise before, but this was something else. "Prepare the main cannons," she ordered. "Target their lead vessels. Destroy them before they disrupt our formation." The Xylar fleet fired in unison, beams of energy cutting across space, aiming at the human lead ships. The humans dodged, or rather, they anticipated each strike. One small fighter veered into a debris field, using the ruins of an asteroid belt as cover. Another warped slightly, sending decoy signals that made the Xylar fire miss entirely. Lyric's claws clenched. "They're predicting our attacks again," she hissed. The battle raged across the void. The humans split into multiple groups, each striking at critical points in the Xylar fleet. Some targeted weapon arrays, some communications, and some simply drew Xylar forces away from the real objective. Lyric realized with a sinking feeling that she was not just fighting humans, she was fighting their strategy, their intelligence, their creativity. Captain Voss directed her squad with calm efficiency. Alpha Group flanked the Dreadnought. Beta cut their communications. Gamma provide overwatch and decoy, move. The humans were small, but their impact was enormous. A single pulse from one of Voss's ships disabled the shield generator of a massive Xylar cruiser. Instantly, beams from nearby ships tore through the hull. Another human fighter launched micromissiles at the fuel supply lines, creating chaos and forcing Xylar ships to break formation to avoid explosion. Lyric's fleet faltered. Her orders were precise, yet every move she commanded was anticipated. The humans did not just respond, they adapted. They learned the Xylar patterns in real time and exploited them, turning overwhelming numbers into a trap for themselves. Hours into the battle, Lyric called for reinforcements, but the humans had already moved. They appeared behind her fleet, striking at previously secure positions. She watched helplessly as her ships scrambled to respond, only to fall into another human-engineered trap. The brilliance of their strategy was undeniable. Varric spoke quietly, almost in awe. "Commander, they are using our strengths against us. Every advantage we have, they turn it upside down." "Yes," Lyric said, her voice tight with frustration and fear. "And that is why we are losing." In the middle of the chaos, Captain Voss noticed a massive Xylar battleship trying to flank her squad. Without hesitation, she made a split-second decision. She directed her fighters to divide, creating the illusion of vulnerability. The Xylar ship, seeing an opening, advanced confidently, right into a carefully laid ambush. Explosions tore through space as micro-drones hidden in nearby debris attacked the flanks of the Xylar ship. Its shields failed within minutes, and the once proud battleship was reduced to drifting wreckage. Voss's squad escaped unscathed, moving to the next target. Lyrics felt her stomach tighten. The humans were small, yes, but every move they made struck like a scalpel. They were not reckless, they were precise, daring, and terrifyingly intelligent. The Xylar had been masters of strategy for centuries, yet here were humans, rewriting the rules in real time. The battle continued for hours. The Xylar fleet, though vast, began to fracture under the pressure. Ships collided, formations broke, and communication failures spread. Lyrics barked orders constantly, trying to regain control, but every command seemed to play into the humans' hands. Finally, a warning came through from Varric. "Commander, our flagship's engines are damaged. They are targeting the Dreadspire directly." Lyric's eyes widened. "Divert all firepower to them. Interceptors, engage." The human fleet split again, drawing the interceptors away with feints and decoys. One small fighter, piloted by Voss herself, moved directly toward the Dreadspire's weak points. It fired a precisely timed pulse that disrupted the ship's shields temporarily. Xylar gunners scrambled, and the humans retreated before the shields fully restored, leaving damage in their wake. Lyric's heart raced. She had faced powerful enemies before, but never had she seen such daring, such boldness, and such precise improvisation. The humans were turning the tide, and she could not stop it. Hours later, the battle ended not with a single decisive strike, but with the Xylar fleet in retreat. Ships limped away, battered, confused, and demoralized. The humans had lost few, if any, ships. Their strategy had won without a single massive engagement. Lyric stood on the bridge, exhausted, staring at the flickering holograms. "They're different," she said quietly. Varric nodded. "More than different, Commander. They're exceptional. They think, act, and adapt in ways we cannot predict." Lyric's claws tapped the console. "We cannot fight them the way we fought others. Not with brute force, not with numbers alone. We must learn from them. We must adapt." Meanwhile, Captain Voss surveyed the battlefield from her cockpit. The humans had shifted the momentum of the war, showing that courage, intelligence, and bold thinking could overcome superior numbers and firepower. She looked at her crew, smiling. "We're making history," she said, "and we're just getting started." The Xylar Dominion, once confident of victory, now faced a terrifying truth. Humans were not just another enemy. They were a new kind of force, a species that could adapt, improvise, and strike where it mattered most. The war had shifted, and for the first time, the Xylar feared the humans not because of their weapons, but because of their minds. Lyrics clenched her claws, her eyes reflecting the distant lights of Kael'Tris IV. The humans had shown their strength, and she would have to respond. Not with fear, but with ingenuity of her own. The next battle would determine the fate of the Xylar Dominion. And for the first time she knew it would not be easy. The turning point had come. The humans were no longer just survivors, they were architects of change. And the galaxy, vast and endless, would never be the same. The battlefield was quiet, but the air of tension remained thick. Commander Lyric sat in the command chamber of the Dreadspire, staring at the flickering holographic maps of the recent engagements. Her fleet had survived the last wave of attacks, but the victory was hollow. The humans were not defeated. They had won battles not by brute force, but by thinking differently, by improvising in ways the Xylar could not understand. A report blinked across her console. A human officer had been captured during a reconnaissance mission. The council expected fear, defiance, or anger, but what Lyrics found when she approached the holding cell was something entirely unexpected. The human officer stood calmly, his posture straight, his eyes steady. He was small, fragile by Xylar standards, yet something about him radiated confidence. Lyrics studied him carefully. "You are Commander Lyrics," the human said, voice calm but firm. "I have heard of you." Lyrics' claws flexed. "I am commander of the Xylar Dominion. You are far from home, human. You should fear me." The human smiled faintly. "Fear is not productive. Understanding is." Lyrics blinked, startled. She had expected defiance, bargaining, or desperation. Instead, this human spoke with clarity and confidence that unsettled her. "You fight with courage," Lyric said cautiously. "And ingenuity." You do not follow the rules of war as others do. That is correct, the human replied. We do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight to survive, to adapt, to protect what we value. And we learn from every challenge. Lyrix's antennae twitched. Learning? You are able to anticipate our moves, exploit our weaknesses. Yet your ships are smaller, your numbers fewer. How? The human officer leaned forward slightly. Because we think differently. We value initiative, creativity, and cooperation. We observe, we experiment, and we adjust. We are not limited by hierarchy or fear of failure. When others hesitate, we act. When others rely solely on rules, we innovate. Lyrix felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. For centuries, the Xylar had relied on discipline, hierarchy, and overwhelming firepower. Their strategies had been flawless until now. Humans were not bound by the same conventions. They had no fear of taking risks, no hesitation in improvising. And that was why they were winning. Your kind, Lyrix said slowly, is unlike any we have faced. You are small, yet formidable. Fragile, yet unyielding. How do you endure? The human officer's eyes gleamed. We endure because we trust each other. Because we adapt. Because we refuse to accept that something cannot be done. Every obstacle is a challenge. Every failure is a lesson. That is how we survive. Lyrix sat back, contemplating. She had never considered war in this way. The Xylar had always focused on power, control, and precision. Humans focused on possibility, creativity, and courage, and it was terrifyingly effective. Varric approached, his antennae lowered in respect. Commander, perhaps we have underestimated them. Not just in battle, but in mind and spirit. Yes, Lyrix murmured, and underestimating them is the Xylar's greatest mistake. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, Captain Elena Voss and her squad were regrouping after their latest victory. Voss had observed countless Xylar maneuvers and countered them with improvisation and ingenuity. She did not need to understand the Xylar culture, only their tactics. She relied on observation, intuition, and cooperation with her squad. Every move they make teaches us something, Voss said to her co-pilot. We adapt, we learn. We get stronger. Her co-pilot nodded. And they can't predict us because we don't think like them. Voss smiled faintly. Exactly. We're rewriting the rules of this war. Back on the Dreadspire, Lyrix requested a private meeting with the council. The Xylar leaders were uneasy. Admitting that humans were exceptional felt almost like betrayal of their centuries of tradition. They adapt too quickly, one elder said. We cannot keep up. Their strategies defy our understanding. Lyrix addressed the council firmly. It is not just strategy. It is their way of thinking. Humans are not like other species. They innovate constantly. They act when others hesitate. They cooperate in ways we do not. That is why we are losing. Zalthor, the council elder, leaned forward. So what do we do? Fight differently? Adapt like them? Lyrix's eyes gleamed with determination. We must. If we continue as we always have, we will lose everything. We must learn from the humans, not merely copy them, but understand why they are so effective. Their mind, their courage, their adaptability, that is the weapon we face. In a secure facility on a neutral planet, the captured human officer spoke again. You fear what you do not understand. But understanding changes everything. Once you see our philosophy, once you grasp why we fight, you will realize that numbers and power alone cannot define victory. Lyrix listened carefully. And you believe your kind will win? We do not worry about winning, the human said. We focus on what is possible. We adapt, we survive, and we shift the battlefield in ways no one else can. That is our advantage. Lyrix left the chamber, her mind racing. The humans were more than fighters, they were thinkers, innovators, and problem solvers. They turned fear into courage, scarcity into resourcefulness, and risk into opportunity. The Xylar had underestimated the value of imagination in war. Later, Lyrix observed the human fleet from orbit. Voss's ships moved with confidence, improvising mid-battle, coordinating effortlessly and striking where it hurt most. The humans were small, yet they seemed unstoppable. Their courage and ingenuity were reshaping the war in ways no Xylar strategist could have predicted. Varric approached her again. Commander, they are not just fighting, they are teaching us how we could be different, better. Lyrix nodded slowly. Yes, and we must learn quickly or the Dominion falls. They are not only a threat, they are a lesson. Across the stars, Voss led her team to the next target, Every engagement reinforced the human philosophy: observe, adapt, improvise, and act decisively. They did not wait for perfection. They learned from failure and used it to grow stronger. Lyrics understood now that the war was not just about ships and weapons. It was about mind and spirit. The humans' advantage was not in firepower or technology, but in their ability to think differently, to act boldly, and to adapt instantly. That was the revelation that changed everything. As the sun, or what passed for a sun on Keltris IV, set over the horizon, Lyrics gazed out at the battlefield. The humans were small, yet their presence loomed larger than any Xylar dreadnought. They were the architects of a new way of war, a force that could not be predicted and a species that refused to be defeated. Lyrics clenched her claws, her mind already planning. She would not let the Dominion fall. She would observe, adapt, and innovate. She would understand the humans, not to emulate them blindly, but to survive. And perhaps one day to turn their own lessons against them. The war had shifted. The humans were no longer simply opponents, they were a revelation, a force that challenged everything the Xylar believed about strength, strategy, and courage. And as the stars shimmered above, Lyrics realized that the true battle had only just begun. The edge of the galactic core shimmered with distant stars, but the darkness of space was pierced by the lights of hundreds of warships. The final battle had arrived. The Xylar Dominion, battered but not broken, faced the human fleet. Commander Lyrics stood on the bridge of the Dread Spire, her claws clenched around the console. Every fiber of her being was tense. "We hold here," she said. "We cannot lose this battle. Everything depends on it." Varric's antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, they are few, but their coordination, it is terrifying. Every move seems perfectly timed." Lyrics nodded. "Then we must be perfect as well. Firepower, formation, strategy. Everything must be flawless." But deep down she knew perfection would not be enough. The humans did not fight like anyone else. They did not rely on numbers or brute force. They relied on adaptability, on courage, on the unexpected. And Lyrics had learned from the last engagements that nothing she had done before would prepare the Xylar for this. Captain Elena Voss observed the Xylar fleet from her small cockpit. Her squad was ready. They had studied, learned, and adapted. Each human ship was nimble, each pilot aware of the others. They did not fear death. They feared failure less than hesitation itself. "Remember the plan," Voss said calmly. "Improvise if needed. Watch, adapt, and strike where it matters." The Xylar fleet advanced, confident in its numbers and firepower. Massive ships blazed across space, ready to crush the humans. But the humans did not panic. They moved in ways the Xylar could not predict, splitting into small groups, feinting attacks, and using the environment to their advantage. Asteroid fields became cover, radiation belts became weapons, and debris from destroyed ships became traps. Lyrics barked orders, directing her fleet with precision. "Engage! Focus on the lead human vessels!" The humans reacted instantly. Voss's squad divided, some drawing fire, some attacking weak points, some observing and reporting enemy movements in real time. A pulse shot from a human ship disabled a major Xylar battleship's engines, leaving it drifting helplessly. Another human fighter fired a carefully timed missile that tore through the hull of a heavy cruiser. Every strike was small, precise, and effective. Lyrics's eyes widened. How do they do this? They are smaller, weaker, and yet every move they make strikes like a scalpel. "They improvise, Commander," Varric said softly. "They learn from every action we take." Lyrics gritted her teeth. "Then we must do the same. We cannot match their courage, but we can anticipate it. We must adapt." For hours the battle raged. The Xylar fleet fired relentlessly, but the humans continued to outmaneuver them. Every strategy the Xylar used was countered with improvisation. Small squads disabled weapon arrays, sabotaged engines, and disrupted communications. They attacked where the Xylar were strongest and defended where they were weakest. Voss directed her team with precision, but always left room for instinct. Every pilot knew when to follow orders and when to act independently. The humans' adaptability turned what should have been a hopeless fight into a series of calculated victories. Lyrics realized the truth. This was not about numbers, weapons, or technology. This was about mind and spirit. Humans had a strength the Xylar could not measure. Creativity under pressure, courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and the ability to learn and adapt instantly. "Prepare boarding teams," Lyrics ordered suddenly. If we cannot defeat them from afar, we take the fight to them. Her ships closed in on the human vessels, but even this plan backfired. Humans anticipated every maneuver, setting traps and ambushes that destroyed the Xylar boarding crafts before they reached their targets. Voss's small team struck like lightning, disabling the Dreadspire's weapons temporarily and forcing the Xylar to retreat. Lyrix's heart pounded. She had commanded fleets for centuries, yet these humans had turned her world upside down. They were small, seemingly fragile, and yet they had shifted the course of the war with courage, ingenuity, and adaptability. Hours later, the Xylar fleet was fractured, retreating in confusion. Lyrix, exhausted and battered, realized the truth she had long tried to deny. The humans were not just opponents. They were a new kind of force, one that could not be crushed by power alone. On the human side, Captain Voss gathered her team after the engagement. "Every strike matters," she said. "We are not just fighting them, we are teaching them that the rules have changed." Her co-pilot nodded. "And they cannot predict us." "Exactly," Voss replied. "We don't fight like them. We fight like humans." Lyrix retreated to a secure chamber aboard the Dreadspire, reflecting on the war. The humans' success was not due to superior weapons or numbers. It was due to their minds, their courage, and their willingness to act differently. They had shifted the balance of power in ways the Xylar could not have foreseen. She thought back to the captured human officer. His words echoed in her mind. "We adapt, we survive, and we shift the battlefield in ways no one else can. That is our advantage." Lyrix realized that the Xylar had not lost because they were weaker. They had lost because they were rigid, bound by tradition, and unwilling to think differently. The humans had shown them a way of courage, creativity, and adaptability. As the final skirmishes ended, Lyrix ordered a ceasefire. She had no choice. Her fleet was battered, her forces confused, and the humans had proven that numbers alone could not guarantee victory. She had learned a lesson she would never forget. The galaxy belonged not to the strongest but to the most adaptable. Captain Voss looked at the Xylar surrender. "It's over," she said softly. "For now. But this is only the beginning. We've shown them that humans cannot be underestimated." Her squad cheered quietly. They had faced overwhelming odds, yet survived and thrived. They had shifted the balance of a galaxy-wide war with courage, ingenuity, and teamwork. Lyrix watched from afar as the humans regrouped. She felt a strange mix of admiration and caution. They were small yet unstoppable, fragile yet resilient, ordinary yet extraordinary. The humans had done more than win battles. They had changed the rules of war. The war was over, but the story of humanity's rise had just begun. They had proven that strength was not measured by size or numbers but by courage, creativity, and the will to act when others hesitated. Lyrix clenched her claws, staring at the stars. The humans had shifted everything. The Xylar Dominion had learned a hard lesson. In the galaxy, nothing was permanent, and the rules could always be rewritten if one had the courage to do so. The humans, small and daring, had survived against impossible odds. They had reshaped the galaxy not through sheer force but through ingenuity, adaptability, and unyielding spirit. And the stars themselves seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if recognizing the arrival of a species that would forever change the course of history. Commander Lyrix exhaled slowly, her many eyes reflecting the human ships disappearing into the void. She had witnessed the impossible. She had seen courage and creativity triumph over brute strength, and she knew deep in her being that humanity's story was only beginning. The galaxy had shifted and nothing would ever be the same.